Whenever anybody says to me, my garden is too small for a tree, I always come back with, but there's one tree that even you can fit in. You can fit it in even if you don't have a garden, if you've only got a large doorstep and a tiny patio. And that tree is the Japanese maple, an acer. There are lots of them. They come in, well, I was going to say all colours, it's not all colours, but the opening foliage in spring can be acid yellow or green, and then green and frilly through the summer, turning to bright yellow, or in this case, bright red come the autumn. So you get so much interest out of them. All right, in winter, nothing to look at but twigs. But for the rest of the year, they're elegant little trees. They'll grow about there if they're in the open ground, sometimes a bit bigger than that. But you can control their growth and fit them into the tiniest garden if you grow them in a pot. I've got a terracotta pot here. Any kind of pot will do. Terracotta's quite handsome. And when you've got a terracotta pot, you'll find in the bottom one large hole. Now, to make sure that the compost doesn't block that hole up, get a couple of pieces of broken flower pot and lay them concave side downwards over the hole like that, so that they stop it from being blocked by compost. The water will be able to escape underneath them, but then if you just put compost straight on top of it, that hole could well become blocked. This is good, fresh, peat-free compost. I'm putting in, well, what, about 3 inches in old money, that's about 8 centimetres, just in the bottom there, lightly firming it down, not very much. And then the plant can come out of its pot. Tap it away. I'm checking the variety here. What does it say? Mixed. Isn't that helpful? Well, these will be selected as seedlings for good autumn colour. And you can see when you buy a plant in autumn, this time of year, you can see how good a colour it makes. And this is super. So who cares what it's called if it looks good? Look at the root ball. It's quite tightly packed in there. You could leave it like that and just put it straight in its new pot. But I do like to just tease these roots out ever so slightly. You don't have to bash it to bits. But by teasing it out with a hand fork, you'll give them the incentive to spread out into the new compost rather than just keep going round in circles. So all these roots here will suddenly think, oh, I can go a bit further than I've been going, and I can have a better life and enrich the tree above. Because when you're growing anything in a pot, you're playing God. You know, you're in charge of water, food, everything. So you want to give it the best conditions that you possibly can. That should just about do it. I think I've come round right the way around. Sit it in the pot so that that root ball is about, that nearly perfect. It's a little bit low, but you do want it reasonably low, because what you want is to be able to fill up, when it's planted, the distance between the top of the root ball and the rim of the pot with water. Now, if I potted that up so it sat there, you'd have a dickens of a job to water it, because the water would just run off. So set it down a bit so that you can leave that space, and then when you're running around with your watering can, daily or twice daily in summer, you'll make sure that you are actually letting the water go down. Generally speaking, rule of thumb, an inch of water, they always used to tell me as an apprentice, will travel 9 inches down in compost. 1 inch goes 9 inches. I think that's a bit optimistic, actually, but it does mean that at least the water will go to where it's needed. And then with your fingers, get this compost right the way down the side. You don't want any air gaps. Leave air gaps and the entire root ball can dry out. So wiggle it around a bit, as I'm doing here, and feel with your fingers all the way down. It doesn't have to be rammed firm, but just make sure that there are no air pockets down there, because even in winter it could well dry out. I'm turning it round as I do it, just so I can get it down there. And it's rather convenient. How big a pot do you need? Well, as big as you like. If I'd planted this one in a pot 3 times as big, it would just have sat there looking rather stupid, wouldn't it? And the compost could be cold and stagnant. So this is about the right size to pot this acer into. Look, I'm going right around with my fingers now. There it is. Tap, tap, tap. just to loosen the surface, and you can see now I've got this gap about 1 inch between the rim of the pot, surface of the compost. Fill it up with water, and I will water it in a minute so it's soaked even at this time of year. What to do now? Stand it somewhere sheltered during the winter, not least because that way the foliage in autumn will last as long as possible rather than being blown off. And when you're potting one up to start with, I could leave it exactly as it is, but in order to encourage it to bush out a bit and form a more elegant shape in future years, I'm just going to tip these branches back. Generally speaking, Japanese maples need very little, if any, pruning, but right at the beginning of its life, in a container like this, I am going to just shorten 1 or 2 of these shoots. Not much, just a little, and that will mean it's actually too nice because I'm leaving that one. I'll take that one down a bit, and just that one, and that really is about all I want to do to encourage it to spread out and form a handsome shape. If you butcher Japanese maples, they look ugly, so I'm going to let that grow and do its own thing. It will be able to stay in that pot, this size, in relation to its root ball, for 2-3 years, and then I would certainly move it onto a larger container. But when you get onto a decent sized container that's 18 inches across, something like that, you can leave it in that for a good number of years and just scrape off the old compost on the surface each spring, replace it with fresh, and you'll find that in your tiny garden, the tree you chose, the Japanese maple, will last you for years. I had one of these in a pot for 20 years. It's not with me anymore, but it was for 20.